Do you have a right to use a gun for self-defense in Canada? Hi, Style Attorney here. I'm a criminal lawyer that's licensed to practice in Ontario and licensed to practice in New York. And in light of recent events, I want to bring this to light again. But first, check out this quote by our Prime Minister.
And there are debates, and we have a culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly law-respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You can take it to the range, no problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks. But there's a difference around the culture. And one of the things that we're seeing with the debate in the States is you get more and more of the American style, right to carry, self-defense arguments filtering up through the the usual more right-wing communications channels.
Yeah. In that quote that circulated last year, Justin Trudeau says you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That is not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. So I'll just preface this by saying I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer, and I'm not here to give you legal advice. But is Justin Trudeau correct in his assessment? My answer to that would be kind of, a little bit not. Why is he correct? The reason he's correct is because it is not a right that we have constitutionally or otherwise. We do not have a right to bear arms. We do not have a right to use firearms for the specific purpose of defending ourselves. And in fact, if you go to the PAL, Possession and Acquisition License course, Possession and Acquisition License, the course for that, if you say, hey, the reason I'm taking this course is so I could have a gun for home defense, they probably won't let you take the course. But that doesn't mean you can't use a firearm for self-defense. Imagine if you have a loaded firearm and you're hunting, and then a bad guy jumps out of the bushes and he wants to kill you. Are you then supposed to go hand to hand with him and box? Of course not. So the law allows you to use a firearm for self-defense if it's done properly, but the law does not give you an inherent right like the Second Amendment that the Americans have to defend yourself with a firearm or to own firearms for the purpose of defending yourself. So what does the law say about self-defense? Well, let's take a look at section 34 of the Criminal Code. So I got my 2023 edition of the Criminal Code here, and it says a person is not guilty of offense if they believe on reasonable grounds that force is being used against them or another person, or that a threat of force is being made against them or another person. The act that constitutes the offense is committed for the purpose of defending or protecting themselves or the other person from that use of threat of force, and the act that is committed is reasonable in the circumstances. So there's this whole idea of a reasonableness analysis, and often in law, that's what you're dealing with. Reasonable, reasonable, reasonable. And it's kind of tricky, right? Because how do you determine what is reasonable when someone breaks into your house, you're groggy, you don't have your glasses, your wife is in there, your kids are in there, you're threatened, you don't know what's going on, and that person comes up and you think they're holding a knife, but it's actually a gun or whatever. How do you determine what's reasonable? The Criminal Code lays out some things to consider. So back to the code, and what you have to look at is the nature of the force or the threat, the extent to which the force is imminent, the person's role, so your role in the incident. Like if you provoke an incident, or in the case of Cahill, this is a case that just was retried last year. If you start something with someone and that person retaliates, that's something they would want to consider. Whether any party to the incident used or threatened to use a weapon, the size, age, gender, and physical capabilities, the nature, duration of any history or relationship, any history of interaction or communication between the parties, the nature and proportionality of the person's response, and whether the act committed was in response to the use of force or the threat. So imagine someone breaks into your house and you're like, time out. I got to ask you a few biographical questions to determine whether or not my behavior is going to be reasonable. That's just not an analysis that the average person who's woken up in the middle of the night has the wherewithal to undertake. All the while, they may be facing what is a deadly threat, and that is in a matter of seconds, they have to make a decision. As my favorite YouTube channel says, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. That's from Active Self-Protection. Check him out, great channel. But anyway, in the heat of the moment, you have to make that analysis. So is that something you could really determine reasonably? Well, the court throws you a bone with something called a Baxter warning. And that says that you do not have to weigh to a nicety the amount of force that you're going to use to respond to a threat. So oftentimes when someone's tried in front of a jury, the court will instruct the jury that in determining whether or not this behavior is reasonable, you do not have to be very precise, because when someone is being attacked in the heat of passion, when their life is at stake, they can't exactly be precise and exact. So the court doesn't hold you to that high exacting standards. Now I want to talk about this case of Ali Mian, a guy in Milton. Apparently, according to his lawyer, there was a home invasion, and his lawyer says Ali Mian is a registered firearm owner who used his gun legally against an armed intruder. So what happened was a group of guys, one of whom had a firearm and was actually arrested at the scene by police, broke into this guy's house while his mother was present. He shot one of the individuals once, which ultimately led to the demise of that individual. Now he's being charged with murder. Do you think you should be charged with murder for using a firearm to protect your mother from invaders who are intruding on your safe place, the sanctity of your home? Well, that's what happened to Ali Mian. More details have been coming out in this case, and further things that were said by the lawyer is that he shouldn't be charged with murder for protecting his mother from someone that broke into his home. Also, his lawyer said that his intention was not to kill the intruder. He only shot him once. We are all saddened that the intruder passed away as a result of being shot. Police said another man, 20-year-old of Oshawa, was arrested at the scene and charged with break and enter and unauthorized possession of the firearm. So what's reasonable in that case? A bad guy clearly breaks into your house with a firearm that he's not authorized to possess. You are a lawful gun owner. Your mother is in there. What do you do? And that's why we've got to put it in front of a court. I've done self-defense cases before. And in one of the ones I did, I said to the jury, it's better to be tried by 12 than to be carried by 6. So really, if you are a firearms owner in Canada, can you get away? Could you be excused for using that firearm to defend yourself? Probably. If someone broke into a house of a family and the man of the house shoots the intruder, can I see any jury convicting that individual? No, I don't see that happening, especially if you acted reasonably. But the fact of the matter is, and I say this to my clients all the time, even if you win after going to trial, you still lose, because you're going to have to lawyer up. You're going to have to pay a lawyer a bunch of money. You're going to be on strict bail conditions. Your name's going to be all over the media, right? And at the end of the day, even when you get your acquittal, you're still going to be out a lump sum of money, and you would have gone through a very traumatic experience. So what do you think about Canada's firearms laws? Do you think we should have a castle doctrine? Do you think we should have a right to own firearms, particularly for self-defense? What do you think about Trudeau's comments? Let me know in your comments below. Thanks for watching.